All right, everybody. So I think I'm getting the hang of how all of this works. I realized that I didn't answer uh, my direction that I was going to talk about with the way I helped myself get through that little shot thing. I want to share that with you. Um, I was driving back after a regular TB test that I have to do for work, and this was already, maybe a year or two ago. That's how recent, actually. So look at me, look at the wrinkles on my forehead. I've been around a little while, and I've been living with this shot trauma and difficulties, just this uncomfortableness for a long time. Well over 3 decades at this point. So it's not fun. It's not easy. And so I started talking to myself. Um, I I reparented myself in a way. I kind of gestalted my way through it, empty chair worked my way through it. I basically talked to a part. We all have parts. Now, I want to show the difference between something like DID, that's dissociative identity disorder, where there are parts that have very, very well developed identities. This used to be known as multiple personality disorder. That is the very extreme end of what trauma can do, creating these fractured parts of a person. But for most of us, the majority, we're all the way on the other end of the spectrum, where we just have points in time where things get remembered, or, oh, excuse me, I had the urge to sneeze, where things get recorded into us. So with my little shot trauma, I could still see myself as a little kid, this little kid part of myself. And so I started talking to her like she was next to me. And I said to her, "You did a really, really good job. This is validation that I love my mother. She's so, so wonderful. But she didn't give it to me." And like she always says, it's always the mother's fault. Well, you know what? Mothers are the primary teachers and primary responders. And they have a very, very important role. And sometimes mommy or daddy does not always make the mark of where they need to, you know, and it stays with us. And that's okay. That is okay. We are human. But going back to what I needed from my mom, I needed her to tell me, "You did a good job," even though I was a total crybaby. "You did a good job. You did a good job, honey. You know what? Let's go do something fun right now because you were as brave as you could be." Even though I probably was a total crybaby, I was there experiencing it, and that pulled up all the bravery that I had. Now, as another side note, I've had a lot of loss from the age of 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. I mean, every single year, someone important in my life was dropping dead, older grandparents. And so I had this very, very bad sense that everyone around me was dying. I couldn't understand why I was losing everybody. It was horrifying, and I knew that medical stuff was involved because it always was, and then they were always dead. So you can see how a little child would start to put these things together as you know, connected. So anyway, my I'm there driving back after having another TB test. I'm there telling my younger part, pretending she's in the passenger seat next to me, "You did a really good job. You were so brave. Would you like to do something fun?" "Yeah, we really, really need to go do something fun now." "Oh, we should go to Disneyland." "Well, no, we got to get to work. We can't go to Disneyland, but maybe we can stop by McDonald's and get a Happy Meal." And I did. And I bought myself a Happy Meal. I loved them when I was a kid. I bought myself a Happy Meal. And as I'm there telling my little self, "You did a good job," I felt a few tears come down. And this is old, old trauma that just never got resolved. That's why it would ping back there so painfully, ping my amygdala and get my whole body rolling, because there was so much wrapped up in it. And so all those emotions, they don't leave your body. They're still in there. That's why you get triggered by things, because those emotions have not had the opportunity to come out. So for me, they came out, and I have felt more solid, and I have felt better ever since that. Now, this sort of thing needs work. I still have medical anxiety, all of it, but it's not as bad as it had been, and this is really, really good. So getting into reinforcing things for yourself, doing things over and over is very, very important. So let's see, we covered in the previous video that trauma is universal. We discussed how trauma can be basically anything that is a hiccup for a person in their developmental process. And now let's go into why something gets recorded as a trauma. So if you have, I'm going to try to remember off the top of my head, four circumstances happening all at once. The landscape in your mind promotes something to be traumatic. The meaning of an event that's happening is traumatic. The environment around you is promoting the trauma. And then the big kicker, you can't get away from it. That's what records it as a trauma. All of this whole event will excite your brain energetically to a level of 120 hertz or more. You only need to get up to 120 hertz in order for it to get recorded as a trauma in your mind. Now, that's not to say that energetic levels are, really bad. If you're having a really energetic brain, you're having an energetic experience, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means that you're having a heightened amount of activity, and if bad stuff is occurring, it's going to stay with you. So for example, let's use a roller coaster. Some people love roller coasters, some people hate roller coasters. I don't really like them that much. They're kind of fun, but kind of freak me out. So your brain, the excitement of it, is going to jetty you up to 120 hertz and more. And that's the energetic level of your brain. And if you're having fun, if the meaning of it is great, then you're going to just have a heck of a great time. You're going to love what you're experiencing. If you are afraid of it, let's say you're afraid of heights and you know that it's going to make you nauseous, and you are fearful for your life on it, it's going to get recorded as trauma. And you're going to be like, I stay the heck away from roller coasters because it's not a pleasant experience. And you have that whole energetic level happening, so it's not fun for you. Oh, there we go. There's our little explanation of how something gets recorded as a trauma. Now, I was wondering, this was just a handful of months ago, I finally got the solution to the way I understood why something would get recorded as a trauma, but I didn't understand the mechanism in there, so I'm going to share that part with you. So the mechanism that makes something recorded as a trauma is your brain going into survival mode. So if it's bad enough, if it's scary enough, if it's startling, if you somehow feel in danger, you are going to have survival brain turn on. Survival brain effectively is what causes trauma to get stuck. Now, if it's not traumatic, the sensory information comes in through the reptilian brain, like we were talking about in the other video. Then it goes through the limbic system and, passes through our emotions, and then it comes out to the prefrontal where it can be cognitively processed out and not stay with us. But when survival brain happens, it's like lockdown between these different locations. The experience comes in through our sensory, goes up through the reptilian brain into the limbic system, and it stays there. Hippocampus is compromised, the amygdala is compromised, and bingo, you now have a trauma. So whatever you just experienced went in, made it to the amygdala and the hippocampus, and lockdown has happened because survival brain has turned on. So survival brain turned on a lock between the limbic system and the prefrontal. So now you've got this trauma that's stuck that cannot go and be processed out by the prefrontal. This is how people get into situations where they know they should be over it, but emotionally, physically, they're not, and they don't know why. They don't know why it's so freaking stuck. Because up here, they know it's over and done with, things are fine. What is wrong with me? And that creates all sorts of guilt. It creates all sorts of self-judgment. It creates a really nasty cycle that further solidifies and ingrains those angry neural pathways into your brain, and we start to get really mean towards ourselves, really judgmental sometimes. And if you haven't, good for you, because we don't want that for you. You do not deserve it. But let's see, so I was talking about the lockdown, yes, of information. So once information, the trauma, is stuck right there in the limbic system, it stays there, and it can stay there for years. It can stay there quiet for years. It can stay there loud for years. You know, everybody's experience is different. Later experiences can re-trigger an old trauma that you thought, you know, you had put to bed or didn't really affect you badly. If that's the experience that you're having, you've been coping all this time. And that's okay. That's human nature. It's good. It's good to be coping. But if you think of it like having a glass, I'm going to bring my tea over here, and your glass has a certain capacity. This is us. We have a certain capacity. That's all we've got. So we keep accumulating trauma after trauma after trauma. And we're still doing fine. We're managing. We're fine. We are solid individuals. We are A-okay. And then one last drop hits the cup and things start to overflow. And the reason is because we don't have any more capacity for it. We hit our limit. We hit our limit. So I'm going to teach you some hints and some tricks in the next video that will help to bring down that cup. Just drain it out so that you have enough resiliency and capacity to deal with the crap that we have all around us all the frickin' time. So let's see, at this point, we've gone through why things become trauma, why things get stuck as trauma. Ooh, I forgot to mention that when survival brain turns on, 4 things can either all get activated or just a few of them. That is fight, flight, that sounds very, very familiar, freeze, or fawning. Fawning is also called intend and befriend. All 4 of these things keep a person alive. There was this one recount from a psychologist that I knew, and his client was so distressed because he was held at gunpoint at a little liquor store, and he's like, I didn't do anything. I feel like such a coward. So there's that self-judgment happening. I feel like such a coward. I didn't do anything. I didn't move. I just froze. And so his doctor asked him, he said, now, if you had moved, if you fought the guy, what would have happened? Well, I would have been shot. I'd be dead. Okay, so that was not a valid option to the brain. How about flighting, leaving, running from the situation? What would have happened? I would have been shot in the back. Yeah, so the brain saw immediately that's not a valid option either. So the only thing that it thought it could do was freeze, which is what it did automatically. This is not the thinking brain working. This is our survival brain jumping into action, trying to keep us alive. And people can stay frozen a long, long time. They can stay shock. When you're in shock, a state of shock, you're still frozen. So, and somatically, your body can stay frozen in certain ways a long time. Like unprocessed trauma can manifest physically, like back pain and migraines. And oh, I can tell you all about migraines. That's what my trauma liked to manifest itself as. So anyway, and then the last one, fawning, tend and befriend. This one is important because it's what keeps a lot of women specifically, but it does go across the board gender-wise, but it keeps them trapped in an unhealthy relationship. They will, and it could be a narcissistic relationship, it could just be your run-of-the-mill toxic relationship, but you'll have trauma bonding happening. And I can tell you all about trauma bonding. It's like an unwilling addiction. You don't even have a say in it. It just happens automatically. And you become addicted unwillingly to things calming down and being soothed, and your loved one treating you nicely. And at the same time, you're so hungry from how they used to be nice to you during the love bombing stage. So I probably just threw a whole lot of material at you there. But let's go back to tend and befriend. Or fawning, and that is where you are trying your best to be nice in the situation, keep it nice, because that is what will save you, whatever it is. That's what Stockholm Syndrome actually is. You are just doing your best to be affable, be sweet, be nice, and no one's going to pick on you. And that is why people can get stuck staying in very, very unhealthy, toxic places. We can do trauma bond in another video if you would like, but I'll very, very briefly give the definition of it. Trauma bond, like I had said before, is when you become unwillingly addicted to the behavioral patterns that your emotional or sometimes physical or sexual abuser can perpetrate against you. So if you have somebody who at first in the relationship is so nice and they're pretending to be this amazing, wonderful person, that's who you fall in love with. And then slowly they start to present who they really are, and they're assholes. And they, or not plural, they are an asshole, yeah. And anyway, so they're awful, and your heart is like, where did my love go? Where did you go? I love you and you're not being kind to me anymore. What is happening? And so it peaked and now it's coming down. And then they'll breadcrumb you and they'll give you a little more love. And it's still continuing to go down. And then they'll give you a little more love. And then they'll continue to go back to being mean. And a little more love. Pretty soon, you're functioning down here in the relationship, and they are just regularly mean to you, and oh, you just so badly miss. That's where the addiction comes in. You're not doing it consciously, but you so badly miss how things used to be. You miss what you fell in love with. The reality is, you didn't fall in love with that person. That person doesn't exist, and that can be such an assault to the system, our brains won't accept it. That's why some breakups can be so freaking traumatic. Some are not. Some are amicable. They're not as bad, you just go your separate ways. But other ones, the ones that wreck you, holy effing hell, that's a trauma bond. Okay, so now the next video is going to be about our tips and tricks.